5 hours. That's how long Vanessa Thompson waited, ignored and dismissed by the bank manager, while others were welcomed with smiles and guided inside without question. But the moment the CEO walked in, everything changed. Don't forget to subscribe and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The glass doors of Oakview Capital Bank slid open, releasing a gust of cool air that contrasted sharply with the summer heat. Vanessa Thompson stepped inside, her posture confident, her navy blue pantsuit tailored to perfection. She exuded power and purpose, her head held high, her movements precise. This wasn't just a loan meeting, it was the key to expanding her consulting firm nationally. She approached the front desk where the receptionist, Ashley Monroe, sat, blonde hair perfectly pinned, her smile polished but hollow. Vanessa offered a polite nod. "Good morning, Vanessa Thompson. I have an appointment with Stephen Whitaker at 11. Ashley's eyes flicked up, scanning Vanessa's appearance with a practiced detachment. "You're on the schedule," she replied flatly. "You can have a seat. He'll be with you shortly." No smile, no warmth, just a mechanical response. Vanessa felt the chill in her words but kept her face neutral. She was here for business, not pleasantries. She moved to the seating area and chose a chair near the floor-to-ceiling windows, placing her briefcase neatly on her lap. She watched the flow of people moving through the lobby, confident, well-dressed professionals who seemed to belong. They laughed softly, exchanged firm handshakes, and were quickly ushered through the frosted glass doors. It was seamless, effortless. Vanessa waited patiently, her posture flawless, her face composed. She was used to waiting, but not like this. A man in a tailored gray suit walked in, his shoes clicking confidently against the marble. He approached Ashley, who immediately brightened, her smile warm, her tone friendly. Within moments, he was led inside. Vanessa watched, her jaw tightening. She was sure his appointment was after hers. A woman in a designer blazer followed, chatting casually with Ashley before being escorted through the doors without delay. Vanessa's fingers tightened on her briefcase, but her posture remained impeccable. She reminded herself that delays were normal. Banks were busy. She would wait. But she continued to watch, her eyes sharp, her presence still. 6 people walked in after her. 6 people were greeted warmly, escorted inside without hesitation. None of them had appointments. She was certain. Vanessa's chest tightened, the cold prick of invisibility settling beneath her skin. She felt it in every passing glance that slid over her as if she were part of the furniture. In every half-hearted nod from Ashley that barely concealed the impatience underneath. In every whisper of laughter that moved through the lobby, light and easy, unburdened by the weight of being unseen. She looked at Ashley, who was now laughing at something on her phone, her earlier coldness replaced with warmth. Vanessa felt the sting of dismissal, not just being ignored, but being deemed unimportant. Her fingers tightened around her briefcase, her face a mask of calm. But inside, the anger curled, sharp and insistent. She could feel it pressing against her skin, a reminder that she was being pushed aside, made to wait while others walked through doors that remained firmly closed to her. She checked her watch, the time glaring back at her. 5 hours. 5 hours of waiting, of watching, of being ignored. She had been invisible long enough. Vanessa stood, her movements controlled, graceful, powerful. Her presence demanded acknowledgement. She walked toward the desk, her posture regal, her steps steady, unyielding. Ashley looked up, her face shifting to mild surprise, as if she had forgotten Vanessa was even there. That flicker of recognition, that moment of discomfort, was all Vanessa needed. She had made herself visible. "Has Mr. Whitaker been informed that I'm here?" Her voice was calm, perfectly measured, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath her words. Ashley blinked, her confidence faltering. "He's just finishing up with another client." Her tone was neutral, but Vanessa heard the lie. She didn't move, her eyes fixed on Ashley, her presence pressing down with silent authority. "Are you sure?" Her voice was firm, leaving no room for evasion. "Because I've seen others go in without appointments. I've watched them get welcomed without waiting." Ashley's cheeks flushed, her posture stiffening. Her mouth opened, then closed. Vanessa saw her struggling to find words, to mask the discomfort. Finally, Ashley nodded, her fingers tapping at the keyboard. "I'll let him know you're still waiting." Her voice was quieter now, the confidence drained from her tone. Vanessa didn't smile. She didn't soften. She turned and walked toward the frosted glass doors, her steps measured, purposeful. She was done waiting for permission. She was done being invisible. As she pushed the doors open, The cool air from the executive corridor rushed out, crisp and cold. Vanessa felt it wash over her, washing away the weight of invisibility. She was no longer waiting. She was taking her place. Vanessa walked down the corridor, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The air was cool, the silence heavy, echoing with the quiet hum of importance. She felt the weight of the space, the power behind each closed door. But she kept her head high, her shoulders back. She belonged here. She had always belonged here. The nameplate gleamed in silver, Stephen Whitaker, Senior Loan Officer. Vanessa didn't hesitate. She turned the handle and walked in. Stephen looked up, his eyes widening in surprise. He was alone, seated comfortably behind his desk, his laptop open, his fingers poised above the keyboard. There was no meeting, no client, no excuse. His expression shifted from shock to irritation. He straightened, his shoulders stiffening, his posture hardening. "Miss Thompson," he said, his voice cool, controlled. "You should have waited to be called." Vanessa closed the door behind her, her movements smooth, unhurried. She stood in front of his desk, her posture regal, her presence pressing down on him. "I did wait." Her voice was calm, precise. "For 5 hours." Stephen's face flushed, his jaw tightening. "I've been busy. It's not my fault you were kept waiting." He looked away, his fingers tapping on the desk. "I have other clients." Vanessa's eyes didn't move from his, her gaze steady, cold. "I watched 6 people go in before me. People who arrived long after I did. People who didn't even have appointments." Her voice was calm, her words heavy. "People who were seen." She took a step closer, her presence expanding, filling the room. "I was invisible. I was ignored. I was dismissed." Stephen's shoulders stiffened, his face hardening. "I don't have to justify my schedule to you. Not everyone gets priority." Vanessa's chin lifted, her voice cold, cutting. Priority? Her eyes were fierce, her presence pressing down on him. Or just selective respect? She saw the flicker of panic in his eyes, the brief flash of guilt before he quickly masked it. But it was too late. She had seen the truth. "You made a decision about my worth the moment you saw me," Vanessa continued, her voice steady, unyielding. "You decided I wasn't important enough to be seen. You deemed my time less valuable. You erased me." Stephen's face paled, his shoulders sagging. He looked away, his hands curling into fists. "I didn't. I wasn't. It wasn't personal." Vanessa's voice was cold, precise. "That's the problem. It wasn't personal. It was systemic. It was about who gets seen and who doesn't. It was about power." His mouth opened, then closed. He looked down, his shoulders collapsing, his confidence draining away. Vanessa watched his power crumble, his authority shattering. Before Stephen could respond, the door opened behind them. A voice filled the room, rich and commanding. "Vanessa Thompson? Is that you?" Both heads turned as Daniel Prescott, CEO of Oakview Capital Bank, stepped into the room. His presence authoritative, his tailored suit immaculate. 2 senior executives followed behind him, their faces sharp, watchful. Prescott's eyes widened with recognition, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Well, I'll be damned. Vanessa Thompson, the woman I keep hearing about. You're making waves in the consulting world." Vanessa felt the air shift, the power dynamics tilting. She stood taller, her chin lifting slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Prescott. I appreciate that." Her voice was steady, perfectly controlled. Prescott's smile softened, his posture relaxed but firm. "I didn't realize you were here today. What brings you to Oakview Capital?" Vanessa's jaw tightened, her gaze flicking to Stephen, whose face had gone pale, his posture rigid, his shoulders hunched. She turned back to Prescott, her voice calm, firm. "I had an appointment with Mr. Whitaker at 11 o'clock this morning." Prescott's face changed instantly, his smile fading, his eyes narrowing. "At 11? It's nearly 4 now." His gaze snapped to Stephen, his voice dropping. "What on earth happened?" Stephen's mouth opened, then closed, his eyes wide, panic flickering in their depths. He looked trapped, his authority crumbling. I've been Busey." There was a mix-up in the S-sexual. His words stumbled, his power collapsing under Prescott's gaze. Vanessa's voice was calm, cold, unyielding. "Busy?" Her eyes were fierce, her presence pressing down on Stephen. "I watched 6 people go in before me, people without appointments, people who arrived long after I did, people who were greeted warmly and escorted through those doors without hesitation. Her words were heavy, deliberate, each one landing with precise force. She watched the truth flicker across Stephen's face, his posture sagging, his mouth tightening. He looked away, his hands trembling. Prescott's eyes narrowed, his shoulders stiffening, his voice low, cold. "Is that true?" Stephen's face flushed, his shoulders collapsing. I didn't realize. I was just following protocol." His words trailed off, his voice small, defeated. Vanessa's jaw tightened, her presence expanding, pressing down on him. "Protocol?" Her voice was cold, sharp. "Is that what you call selective respect?" She turned to Prescott, her posture unyielding, her presence commanding. "I was invisible for 5 hours. I was deemed unimportant, less valuable, insignificant. I was erased. And it wasn't an accident, it was a choice. It was a decision about my worth." Her words hung heavily, the air thick with tension. She saw the flicker of guilt in Stephen's eyes, the slight slump of his shoulders. Prescott's face tightened, his jaw clenching. He turned to Stephen, his voice dropping dangerously low. "Step outside now." His words were cold, final, leaving no room for argument. Stephen's face crumbled, his shoulders sagging as he walked out, his presence small, diminished. He closed the door behind him, the sound echoing through the silent room. Prescott turned to Vanessa, his posture softening, his voice low, remorseful. "Vanessa, I am so sorry. This is not who we are. This is not what Oakview Capital stands for." Vanessa's posture remained firm, her voice steady, controlled. "It's not just about today. It's about a system that decides who matters and who doesn't. It's about who gets seen and who stays invisible." Prescott's face tightened, his shoulders heavy. "You're right, and it's going to change. Today was a failure, and I won't let it happen again." Vanessa's lips curved into a knowing smile. "I'll hold you to that." Prescott's respect was genuine, his eyes sincere. "I would expect nothing less." Vanessa stood tall, her presence unshakable. She had been invisible, but now she was seen, and she would never be erased again. The room was silent, heavy with tension and the weight of truth. Vanessa stood tall, her shoulders back, her presence commanding. She had been made invisible, her worth erased, but now she stood undeniable, her power filling the room. Daniel Prescott moved behind his desk, his posture stiff, his face pale with the realization of what had happened under his watch. He took a deep breath, his shoulders tightening as he looked at Vanessa. There was no deflecting, no excuses, only accountability. He cleared his throat, his voice steady but edged with remorse. "Vanessa, I owe you an apology. This should never have happened. You should never have been made to feel less than what you are. An extraordinary leader, an industry powerhouse." His eyes held hers, earnest and sincere. "I take full responsibility." Vanessa didn't respond immediately. She let his words settle, their weight pressing down on the room. She watched the regret on his face, the way his shoulders sagged, the way his eyes held genuine shame. She saw that he understood. Truly understood. Prescott straightened, his face hardening with resolve. "This institution owes you more than just an apology. You came here for a loan, and that's exactly what you're going to get." He turned to one of the senior executives standing by the door, his voice firm. "Fast track her application. I want approval on my desk by the end of the day." His gaze returned to Vanessa, his shoulders squared. "Your business deserves our support, and I intend to ensure you get it." The executive nodded quickly, leaving the room to carry out the order. Prescott's posture softened, his face earnest. "I can't change what happened today, but I can make sure you get what you came for, and I can make sure it never happens again." He extended his hand, his eyes sincere. "You have my word." Vanessa looked at his outstretched hand, her jaw tightening, her eyes steady, unwavering. She looked at Prescott, at his posture, at his expression. He was genuine. She believed him. But it wasn't enough. She didn't take his hand. Instead, she took a step back, her presence expanding, her shoulders squaring. Her voice was calm, steady, perfectly controlled. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Prescott, but I won't be taking the loan." Prescott's face faltered, his eyes widening in shock. "What? Vanessa, please. I understand why you're upset, but we can make this right. You deserve this funding. Your business deserves it." Vanessa's lips curved into a soft, knowing smile. "You're right, my business does deserve it, but not from here." Her voice was smooth, regal, carrying the weight of her dignity. "I waited for 5 hours because I thought I needed this bank. I thought I needed your approval. She took another step back, her presence powerful, unshakable. But while I was waiting, my phone kept buzzing. Venture capitalists, angel investors, people who see my worth without needing to be convinced. Her chin lifted, her gaze unyielding. People who recognize my value without requiring me to fight for respect. She watched Prescott's face fall, his shoulders tightening, his posture stiffening with the realization of what she was saying. She saw the regret, the guilt, the understanding that he had lost more than just a client. Vanessa's voice was calm, precise. I don't need your loan anymore. I've already secured the funding I need. And I've chosen to partner with people who respect me from the moment I walk in the room. Prescott's shoulders sank, his face paling as the weight of her words settled. He looked down, his hands curling into fists on the desk. Vanessa, I understand. His voice was low, remorseful. And I don't blame you. I don't blame you one bit. Vanessa took a deep breath, her chest rising, her posture tall, regal. This isn't just about today. It's about a system that allows people like me to be erased. It's about who gets seen and who doesn't. It's about power and privilege. Her voice was calm, unshakable. And today, I'm taking my power back. Prescott looked up, his eyes wide, his face twisted with regret. I will fix this. I promise you, Vanessa. I will fix this. Vanessa's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. I believe you, but you'll be fixing it without my business. She turned, her movements smooth, graceful, powerful. She walked toward the door, her head high, her back straight, her dignity intact. As she reached the door, she paused, her hand resting on the handle. She didn't look back, but her voice was calm, steady. I came here today seeking approval. I'm leaving knowing I never needed it. She opened the door and walked out, her steps echoing down the corridor, strong and unwavering. She felt the weight lift off her chest, the tightness in her shoulders easing. She had been made invisible, her worth questioned, her time dismissed. But she refused to be erased. She had reclaimed her dignity, her power, her voice. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her eyes scanning the screen. Another message from Vanguard Capital, confirming their commitment to fund her expansion. They were impressed with her vision, eager to invest in her future. Vanessa's lips curved into a knowing smile. She had waited 5 hours for approval, only to realize she never needed it. She had her worth long before she walked into that bank. She was powerful on her own terms. She looked back at the gleaming glass doors of Oakview Capital, now distant behind her. They had tried to make her invisible. But she had walked out stronger, seen, remembered. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from an investor, this time offering to increase their stake. Vanessa's smile widened. Opportunity was abundant. Respect was non-negotiable. She slipped her phone back into her pocket, her steps light, confident. She had walked into that bank seeking approval. She walked out knowing she never needed it. The truth was clear. Respect wasn't given. It was demanded. And today she demanded it on her terms. She walked away without looking back. She was moving forward, and nothing would stop her. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been made to question your worth, remember this. You don't need anyone's approval to be powerful. You don't have to wait to be seen. Demand respect. Reclaim your dignity. Take your place. And if they try to make you invisible, make sure they remember why that was their biggest mistake. Stand tall. Speak up. Walk away if you must, but never let them erase you. Let us know in the comments how this story resonated with you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.